Peace. Peace, everyone. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. Uh, I'm Ikemba of We Charge Colonialism of the Public Relations Committee. Allow everyone else to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tierney Sherry. I am the steering committee chair at We Charge Colonialism. Frank,
You're on mute.
All right, hey everyone. My name is Frank Malbach. I am the chair for the Political Action Committee. I'm always doing it.
All right, so that's our team. Appreciate everyone that's viewing right now. Make sure that you click on that share button, share with as many people as possible, get them on this study. And, during this, weekly roundup, we're going to go through some current affairs. So we're going to start with what's happening in Tanzania. Suluhu Hassan, who is the new president of Tanzania. If you're not updated on the events over there, the former president John Pombe Magufuli had passed away, transitioned earlier this month, and Hassan had taken over she has become the first woman president of Tanzania. And so that's a historical feat. But what I want to talk about is Hassan's policy. She's sort of like hitting the ground and running. She's picking up where Magufuli had left off at, and so she's sort of developed this anti-graft policy, meaning that she's like tackling graft. Graft is a form of corruption that takes place within a country. And graft is usually when public officials they use their position of power to secure contracts for private companies, and so these contracts that they secure for private companies, these companies sort of grease their palms. They give them some money so they can continue this relationship, and so any future contracts they'll continue to go to a particular private company. And so, there's a lot. With that being said, there was a lot of corruption going on in Tanzania. The former president was tackling these issues, and so the new president, she's continuing to attack these like core problems that Tanzania is facing, because Tanzania still remains one of the poorest countries in the world right now, despite like taking on these liberalization policies and or programs. And usually with these liberalization programs that African countries find themselves into, they find themselves sort of at the short end of the stick when it comes to trade agreements and so forth. It sort of allows them, it opens up borders and allows foreign companies to come in and sort of like bleed into their resources. And so, that's despite like economic growth. You look at Tanzania, there's economic growth that has been happening, little economic growth that has been happening. And some people have been able to rise above what they call like the poverty line. And of course, like Western nations usually establish what the poverty line is. So you have people who are living in extreme poverty, people who are living in poverty in this country. But despite this economic growth, there's still high levels of economic inequality and poverty that's taking place. And so with that being said, though, with the new president, I do want to, sort of just like congratulate her, being the first woman president. But at the same time, it's about, the policies and what what the government is planning to do when it comes to whether if she's organizing, she has a policy to organize with other African nations, and creating like a unified Africa. That's what I really look for when I look at these, public officials. Like, what is their policy towards unifying African states? But yeah, so I'll open it up and see, if y'all had any thoughts about what's happening in Tanzania.
Well, my thoughts are a few things. One, with the corruption issue. So we know that corruption's not particular to Tanzania. Corruption is really a symptom of neocolonialism, meaning whenever you have your governments being controlled by outsiders, that means that the outsiders are making backdoor deals with your leaders, that your leaders are not serving you. Instead, they're serving these white European capitalists. There's these institutions that are basically calling the shots. So that's something I think we always have to bring up when we're talking about corruption in Africa, is that corruption is not the cause, corruption is the symptom, and neocolonialism is really the overarching system that allows for corruption to come into play. So I think, it's always good to see when leaders are obviously rooting out people who have been compromised, because that's all corruption really is. That means you've been compromised. You're no longer standing or sitting inside of the position where you're there for the public. You're now there for your personal interest. And because you're there for your personal interest, you're willing to bow to Western imperialist demands. So once you find that your people have been compromised, I absolutely do think you have to root them out. I'll be interested to see what she does further, because it's not just the individual issue. It really is a systemic issue. To me, the laws and the books inside of these post-colonial Africa are laws that allow these types of things to continue, or laws that basically give individual leaders the rights to ration away the things that should be controlled by the people. So that's what I'll look for going forward from that. But, I do think it's a good move. Obviously, she's under a microscope because John Magufuli was so respected for some of his stances against things like corruption. So I'll be very interested to see if this is something that's going to be the nature of who she is, and if she's going to take it a step further and start really pushing for the systemic changes, so that when she's no longer president, whoever comes after her will actually be able to continue that legacy.
Mm. Yeah, just my contribution to the issue of Tanzania. So let me say this first. To the Tanzanian people, or to the people that live in our part of Africa, in our region, I would say this. You guys are in this for a very long time, as long you guys have decided to take this path. For one side, we can say that since the death of John Magufuli, I think after his burial or his funeral, we have not seen media entity to come out to really praise this man for the role he played in the development and in the awakening of African people in that part of the region, all because he was seen as a threat to them. So the media, the Western media, did not really talk about him like how they talk about other African presidents that seek their interest if something is being done to them. But with this guy, I think his ceremony, we only saw, mostly African leaders. So now, what am I going with this? The new president of this great country, she just started. So I don't want to say, she's a Pan-Africanist, because we want to see how far she is going to go. The issue here is, for now, we can't really tell, because the news we're seeing out there is, she fired corrupt leader, or she suspended corrupt leader. That's what we are seeing right now. But those people she fired, could it be also that they were working behind the scene with John Magufuli, that she was eyeing them, or that she feel that those people are going to be, try to, to her involvement in backing Western entity. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that those are some of the things that we have to look at as well, due to her decision, because she's just coming in right now. So we wait and see, how she's going to proceed, at the end with this. And in addition to that, again, it is a good initiative that she has taken, to get rid of people who will compromise the nation interest. For one fight, like Tiani said, when it comes to corruption, the neoliberal organization, like brother, Kimbat also mentioned, these are people that, we need to look at. They are not in Africa to empower African people or to give good life to African people. They are there to corrupt up and to corrupt the system. So when we talk about corruption in Africa, we are also looking at these people. They are the most corrupt entity, in Africa, and they are the one corrupting Africa. African people are not charity people where, you bring a charity organization, and then they depend on it, or we just want to depend on charity organization, all of those things. We are not those people. We just want to move on. But again, it's a good step that she has taken. But equally so, she need to work, and all African as a whole need to work with her and see the role that she's taking, and they also need to follow it, because she can't fight corruption, or her one. It have to be all African things. It have to be all African leaders that all need to come together to fight.
Yeah, I agree with that. Unite with that wholly. When you look at Tanzania, last point to make, a third of their budget too is coming from international aid. And so once again, it's like this dependency that a lot of these African nations find themselves in. And so, you can never be a liberator, really independent and free state if you're dependent on these foreign nations, former colonizers at that. So they have to break that relationship. So, we're going to continue to.
Here's a crazy idea. Since corruption, I hear every single African country talking about it. Why not they form a continental-wide initiative to rid this continent of corruption? To me, like, I don't like when I hear people in the continent say, "Oh, it's my government, it's my government." Like, if it's all of our governments, then at some point we have to come together to address the initiative. So, that's just a thought.
Indeed. I hope everybody's listening. I hope they're listening on the continent. So we're going to move on. Appreciate that. Everybody continue to observe what's taking place in Tanzania and all over the continent, because, what affects Africans on the continent affects Africans everywhere in the world. So, we're going to move on to a video. We have a video that we want to show. And Frank, are you showing that video, or someone's going to put that up and we're going to, discuss that? So,
do you know how to share your muted, Frank?
Oh, I think somebody.
So everybody give us.
Showing it, right? Is it Raz showing it or Tiani?
I think you're supposed to. You're going to share it on your screen. Are you ready, or you want to go to the next topic while you get set up?
Yeah, go to the next topic.
Okay. Well, I'll go to the next topic. So essentially, there's an issue that's being talked about in the country of Ghana. We know Ghana is obviously a very popular country when it comes to the diaspora right now. And the issue is that a French billionaire, Vincent Bolloré, I don't know what I'm going to say, he basically has bought a port inside of a town called Tema. And essentially this is a port that is utilized not just by Ghana, but it's very important because it's also utilized by Mali and Burkina Faso because those countries are landlocked. So if you can imagine, for example, in the United States, let's say there was a dam or some type of natural, natural resource that the country gets a lot of money from, a very prominent port. Imagine a French billionaire buying the port in the United States. That would never happen. So one of the issues I think that we have to talk about is, why is privatizing African resources okay for Africa, but it would not be okay here? Why is it okay for foreign nationalities, foreign entities, foreign individual capitalists to own own a natural resource. Again, this is something that's central to trading in the region inside of an autonomous country inside of Africa, but it would never pass here. And we should also challenge this, because a lot of the people who push this idea that liberalization of things like trade policies, liberalization in general, deprivatizing different infrastructures that we should be owning, these people are coming from the West. So they tell us, hey, you should allow private investors to come into your countries, although they would never allow that thing to happen inside of their country when it comes to something that's instrumental to their trade or to their commerce. So that's the issue that's going on. I think that it should start a real tangible conversation among our people, particularly us, the masses, the people on the ground who understand that these policies are not fitting. And consider, again, the United States is a capitalist country for the most part. We know there are some socialist policies, but overall it's a capitalist country ran by a few individual, very rich businessmen. So consider that even to them, this would never pass. Even to this country, that would never be okay, to allow a foreign entity to own something that should be privatized, a natural resource that the government depends on. But in Africa, these things just happen all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think like what was it, yesterday, I was having a struggle with someone, even on capitalism, around the system of capitalism and what it has done to the world all over, especially African and indigenous people. And so, the struggle was around, Black capitalism, how Black capitalism, the brother was saying that how it could be used to help empower African people. And the struggle that I have with that, when it comes to Black capitalism, is that if there's no, first of all, capitalism itself, with Black and whoever's behind it, it's a parasitic system. It's exploitative, and so when it comes to capitalism, if you're using capitalism, it has to be used as a function for revolution. So necessarily, like you're using this to profit and benefit individually and create jobs for people. That's not going to, all that's going to do, all it does is legitimize the system and keeps the system functioning the way that it has been functioning. It has to be an attack system. But I think like what's going on in Ghana, I think like this is just an example. It's not an anomaly of what happens. Like this is what capitalism does. The colonizers, those from Europe and America, go into these countries. Well, the corporations go into these countries, and they use people in these countries, these neo-colonists, to be able to, benefit the countries that they. We'll go back to even the article that I talked about when talking about grafting. Like you have these public officials. You have these
Frank, we got
these public officials. What they do is that they look to align their own defense of the masses of African people, and so so what happened in Ghana is not an anomaly. That's happening in all over the continent.
Definitely. And the thing that's even crazy is like this same business guy, the same French guy, Vincent Bolloré, whatever, he owns like a lot of ports all throughout West Africa. There's actually like the article I posted on my channel. You see like all these ports that this man owns, and these are significant land infrastructures for the people. And I think the thing that really catches us off guard is that first of all, it's like Kwame Ture says, capitalism lies all the time. All the time. One of the ways that capitalism lies to us is that they tell us that, well, if we come in and we take control of this port that you have, or of this big chunk of land, then hey, we're able to give you some jobs. And that's going to bring investors, and these investors are going to be able to bring jobs. But if you think about what they're saying that outsiders are going to come in and they're going to employ your people. We know, one, that this is going to be low wage waiver for labor for those who actually do employ their people. Other times you see people bring their own people to employ inside of your country. So number one, even if they are bringing these investments, they're basically saying that we're going to set up a class of people in your country who are going to be the ones in control, and you're going to be the workers, and we're going to be the ones to call the shots. And even in your own country, you're not going to be the one who actually is in a position of power. So just that false equivalency that we've been taught, that people controlling and owning your land, or controlling and owning your resources, that's going to help and develop your country. That's just going to allow apartheid type relationships to exist inside of your country, where you're not even a citizen in the place where you are, where you're not even a person of power in the place where you were born and where your family existed long before these Europeans even landed inside of your country or your continent. So it just gives us a real lens into what are these things that the WTO, the IMF, these lies that they're telling us, lies that, it's okay, we're just investing, this is going to bring development, this is going to bring money, this is going to bring power. Power never comes from giving someone else control over something that's yours. Never. So hopefully we can start really pushing these issues and having these conversations, because it's just, I get so frustrated when I hear like the United Nations and all these other people who are prominent inside of these institutions continue these lies to our people, because a lot of us aren't knowledgeable about the system. They come to us and they present us with these gifts. We don't know how to challenge it. So, yeah.
Yeah, just my thought on that. Yeah, just my thought on that. The reality here is, look, folks, for every time a war is ending, another war starts from there. For every time a war is ending, another war starts from there. What am I saying here? At the end of slavery, there was another war that began from there called colonialism. And then at the end of colonialism, there was another war that began from there. And that was how they called it, neocolonialism. And that's why Nkrumah said neocolonialism is the last stage. But he's there now, though. The question to all is it true that neocolonialism going to be the last stage? I would say maybe and maybe not. Maybe yes, if we all fight against it. But if we don't fight against it, it's not going to be the last stage. The next stage that's going to come is going to be, and which of course we are seeing it now, I call it neo-capitalism or neo-capitalist. That is the next stage that's going to come if we don't fight to end neo-colonialism. So that is what we are seeing right now coming. So it is up to us, we Africans, to fight for our interests. Like Tiani said, you cannot gain control of anything when you take it and give it to the next man. The men that own it, the men that hold it, and the men that dictate to it as to how things need to be done. It is the men that have control over it. So I cannot come in your house and be renting from you, and you allow me to take full control of your house. Obviously, I'm going to dictate to you as to what to be done in your house. In fact, I'm not even going to clean up. I may not even pay the rent on time, or I may not even pay the rent. I might even force you to even serve me or to even feed me because I control you in your own house. That is what happening in Africa, on the African continent, with African people. And African leaders are certain that I think that they don't even know history. They don't even know the people that enslave us, the people that colonize us, and the people that continuously lying to us and stealing our resources. They are that they know so much. But the same people that did this to us, it is the same people on the continent with their military proliferating all over on the continent. Where in this war have you seen African soldier or African military? Where? Apart from Africa. But there's no one country in the world, in America, in China, UK, Germany, Portugal, whatsoever. You don't see African army there. You don't see African bases there. But why should they allow these people to continue playing fool out of them? And they are our leader. So we need to be, they need to be answerable to, or we need to take our complaint to them. We cannot take our complaint to different people, but they are the one we need to take our complaint to. So they need to stop all these things and come back to their senses.
All right. Thank you for that mic drop, Brother Frank. I think you made a good point. You said like neo-capitalism is coming. I think it's already here. And this is what we're grappling with as African people, as revolutionaries. We're dealing with these people who are sort of helping feed the idea that individual Africans can like make it in this system. And so, if they keep on creating this idea, this illusion that anybody can make it, we continue to compete and be at each other's throats to try to reach or fulfill like the American dream. And so that's a serious problem. That's not an African value system. We come from a tradition of looking out for each other. And so I think we're ready for that video. Or are we still okay? I think that we're going to have a little bit more time before we get to that video. But as we wait for that, Habari Ghani, any other news, or are we transitioning?
Oh, looks like we got it.
Oh, look like we might have. There we go.
First, you tell us that it is manly to keep your word. If you are a man, you keep your word. And now all that the black people in this country are demanding, and even the black people in the whole world are demanding, is that you keep your word. You told us we were free. Well then, show us that we're free. You told us that there is justice, equality for all in this country. Well then, stick to your word. And let us see the justice and equality for all. Or else admit to us that you're not a man, you're a worm, you're afraid of us, you're afraid to give us equal stand. You're afraid that if you give us equal ground, that we will match you and we will override you. And if that's what you're afraid of us, then tell us that just what you're afraid of. But don't keep hiding it from us and holding this up to us, and every time we ask you for something, you give us a little bit of something, and it's all tokenism. We don't want tokenism. And there are most black men in this world that don't want charity. And yet still every time we ask you for something, you give us a little piece. You're playing games with us. We're not children. We're big men. I've seen my father have to put up with all kinds of stuff. He was a big man. He raised a family. He went down south, and he had to go around to the back door with his wife. We're not asking for anything. We're not asking for any favors. All we want is what's ours. Now, there are many black veterans who are coming back, and they're mad. They're angry. Do you think that they're going to sit down through this? Our fathers didn't have the knowledge that we had. They sat through it. But there are other black youth that are not going to sit through it. We know about Che. We know about Fanon. We've read the books of our revolution. We've listened to Mao and his quotations. We know where we stand. We're not going to sit for it. We're asking, and if we ask and we don't get, we're prepared to stand up and take it. If I ask a man, I tell a man I am hungry. I tell him I am cold. And I ask him to do something about my condition. And this man holds a loaf of bread right in front of me so I can see it, and I keep asking him, I'm begging him to please give me a slice of the loaf of bread. I am hungry. Then it is known by every psychologist that the next step in the progression is I am going to knock him upside the head and take the bread from him. I'm not going to starve to death. All we're asking, no one wants to see blood. No one likes the smell of blood. No one wants war. Anyone who's been in war doesn't want war. Everyone knows what it is to see the inside of a man's gut hanging out and see your friends die, see relatives die. No one wants to regress back to the state of mind where you have to think it's all for the cause, therefore my mother has to die, my wife has to die, my brothers and sisters have to die. No one wants that. But you're pushing us to it. You're leaving us no choice. We're asking, we're begging. The students up at Columbia, they ask. The brothers down south ask. The brothers in Latin America, the brothers in Africa, they're all asking. All they're doing is asking. Our fathers asked. Our grandfathers asked. The presidents of our universities, our colleges had to go to your back doors to beg that their children be given just enough money so that they could be taught something to live off. And yet still, they asked and asked and asked, and you refused to give them anything. Now, we're just about out of patience. We're not going to ask anymore. The news media says that it's only the young that are militant, only the young that want this and want that. Okay, but we're 40% of the black population now. Or we were a year ago, and still yet we're climbing. Before long, we'll be 50%, 55%, and then we have the command. We're not going to take it. We're not going to take sitting in rotten parks and in places that just aren't fit for living. We're not going to take it. There's a limit to a man's patience, and everyone knows that God, Christ, heaven, everyone knows that what we're asking is not $1 million. What we're asking for is humanity. We're asking to be allowed to live like human beings. And God, you tell us that this is too much to ask. You're sick. You're definitely sick. How can you tell me that it's too much to ask to be a human being?
Guys, thanks for
Wow,
watching.
why you think that piece? Tell us why you think that piece, Frank.
Yeah, that piece, it summarized everything. It summarized everything what we are going through. I mean, all I can say here is to the folks watching and to those that will watch again. The question here is, how long are we going to keep asking? Are we to that point of time where we have gave up to say, you know what, enough is enough? It is time that we stand up and wake up and stop asking. We are not people, who were created to just keep asking. That's the question here. Are we to the point that enough is enough and we have done asking? Because our forefather came and asked, our great-great-great-great-father came, they asked, and were never given to them. Even up to slavery, there was a question that was asked, am I not a man? Because they said to our forefather, the Bible created, or God created man in his own image or in his own kind. But they were being treated different. And they asked this oppressor, am I not a man? Are we not a man? So that's the question again. So are we going to keep asking? For me, I said no. It is time that we all come together. We are at that limit point.
You want to add anything to that, Tanny, before we transition?
We're over time, so Frank, I think, said it all. But hey, I'm with you, brother.
Yeah. That was a powerful piece. I wish we had more time to discuss that. So, but maybe, in the future we can get back to it. For sure. So once again, just want to appreciate everybody for joining us in this, the study, being a part of this podcast and book club. We're here every Saturday at 10 a.m. Right now, we're going to move into chapter 5. So if everybody, I give you a second to get to the page. It's page 181 in my book, Colonial War and Mental Disorders. That's where we're going to start at. Also, just want to encourage everybody as well to visit our website, wechargecolonialism.org, correct? And, we want to encourage everybody to become a member of We Charge Colonialism, because we out here doing that work, and we need as many Africans to be a part of this process as possible. So let's get into it. All right, so colonial war and mental disorders. But the war goes on, and for many years to come, we shall be bandaging the countless and sometimes indelible wounds inflicted on our people by the colonialist onslaught. Imperialism, which today is waging war against a genuine struggle for human liberation, sows seeds of decay here and there that must be mercilessly rooted out from our land and from our minds. We should deal here with the problem of mental disorders born out of the national war of liberation waged by the Algerian people. Perhaps the reader will find these notes of psychiatry out of place or untimely in a book like this. There's absolutely nothing we can do about that. We had no control over the fact that the psychiatric phenomena, the mental and behavioral disorders emerging from this war, have loomed so large among the perpetrators of pacification, the pacified population. The truth of the colonization in its very essence already appeared to be a great purveyor of psychiatric hospitals. Since 1904, we have drawn the attention of French and international psychiatrists and scientific works to the difficulty of curing a colonized subject correctly. In other words, making him thoroughly fit into a social environment of the colonial type. Because it is a systematized negation of the other, a frenzied determination to deny the other any attribute of humanity, colonialism forces the colonized to constantly ask the question, who am I in reality? The defensive positions born of this violent confrontation between the colonized and the colonial constitute a structure which then reveals the colonized personality. In order to understand this sensibility, we need only to study and appreciate the scope and depth of the wounds inflicted on the colonized during a single day under a colonial regime. We must remember in any case that a colonized people is not just a dominated people. Under the German occupation, the French remained human beings. Under occupation, the Germans remained human beings. In Algeria, there is not simply domination, but the decision, literally, to occupy nothing else but a territory. Algerians, the women dressed in heights, the palm groves, and the camels form a landscape, the natural backdrop for the French presence. Did anybody wanted to say anything about that? I don't know. What came to mind when just reading that is just European occupation of other lands when dealing with non-Europeans. They treat the indigenous people, whether in Africa or in the Americas, just we can talk about them presently as if they're not even human, as if they're not there. The main priority and concern of the colonizer is the lands itself and the resources. So, if you're in the way of that, they will commit genocide against those people, or enslave the people through colonialism or chattel slavery, as they've done in the past.
I mean, I think this passage is such a great follow-up to the video we just watched, because that's true. Like, essentially, if I'm convinced that if all African people around the world, whether you're in America, on the continent, in Europe, whatever, in the Caribbean, if we even were to say, you know what, we're not even going to demand anything back, not saying that we're not saying that we're saying this, but hypothetically, if we were to tell the Europeans, we're not going to demand anything back from what you've done to us. We're not going to go to court against you. Just stop any and all activity, stop any and all oppressive systems, and hey, we're good. Meaning, let us live as full human beings. Let us be an autonomous people. Let us have control over our own destinies. Let us be able to make decisions about our day-to-day. Leave us alone. We'll let you go for the past. I'm very convinced that that would still not be enough, and that you'll still see a situation of war being waged, because we have to realize that it's not just things that happen in the past, the things that we seek reparations for, that are relevant. Really, it's the continuation of that system. If the system's not broken, then your humanity is compromised. And so it does remind me of that clip, because even if you are asking for the basic right to be a full human. And to me, a full human means someone who can exercise control over their destinies, who doesn't have to go through a system that is not made for them, that's made to cut them off at every single time where they try to do something against the creation of that system. To me, that's what being a full human is. And I think that the current landscape for that shows that humanity will not be honored by the colonized people until the people are in a position to demand that their humanity be recognized.
Yeah, and let me just throw something real quick. I know we're running out of time, but let me just give 1 minute addition. So, example of the reading and also example from the video that we just watched. We can look at these two countries, DRC Congo and also Haiti. I think recently we've been seeing a lot of tension within Haiti, and Haiti, the citizens from Haiti are also trying to migrate to the U.S. To seek for better life and stuff. And we have seen that the United States president have also tweeted, because I think tweeting for the United States president is common thing, because the former president a lot of time did it, and the current president too is even doing it and tweeting and stuff. He has tweeted that on no way he's going to allow Haitian to migrate to the U.S. and stuff. And the Haitian too, they responded to says that if that's the case, the United States should leave Haiti. The United States should stop supporting a tyrant government, a dictatorship form of government. If they leave Haiti, I think the Haitian people will be able to solve their own problem and manage their resources and manage their economy, then be into their affair. And that also go with DRC Congo. If they can leave DRC Congo, the richest nation or one of the richest nations in the world, if they can just leave DRC Congo and let Congo do their own thing and manage their resources, why do you think life will be better for them? Life will be good for them? Because we know the computer, the television, the gold, the diamond ring, and the gold ring, and the wedding ring, all of those things, it come from DRC Congo. That smaller nation, but the richest nation in the world. If they can just leave them, and the Westerner can just leave them alone and let them take control of their full resources of their decision whatsoever, they will not have time crossing border, coming to the United States, or going to Europe, or passing through the desert from Libya and going to Spain. Just leave the people alone, and you see life will be better.
Hey, yeah, definitely. So let's get through. I'm gonna get through the rest of this chapter, see if we can get to the conclusion as well. I'm at the third paragraph on point 82. A hostile, ungovernable, and fundamentally rebellious nature is in fact synonymous in the colonies with the bush, the mosquitoes, the natives, and disease. Colonization has succeeded once this untamed nature has been brought under control. Cutting railroads through the bush, draining swamps, and ignoring the political and economic existence of the native population are in fact when colonization remains unchallenged by armed resistance, when the sum of harmful stimulants exceed a certain threshold, the colonizers' defense collapse, and many of them end up in psychiatric institutions. In the period of triumphant colonization, a constant and considerable stream of mental symptoms are direct sequels of this oppression. Today, the all-out national war of liberation waged by the Algerian people for 7 years has become a breeding ground for mental disorders. We include here cases of Algerian and French patients under our care, which we think particularly meaningful. We need hardly add that our approach here is not that of scientific work, and we have avoided any semiological, nosological, or therapeutic discussion. The few technical terms used here are solely meant as points of reference. We must, however, insist on points. As a general rule, clinical psychiatry classifies the various disorders presented by our patients under the heading psychotic reaction. In doing so, priority is given to the situation that triggered this disorder. Although here and there mention is made of the role played by the subject's psychological, affective, and biological history and that of his milieu, we believe that in the cases presented here, the triggering factor is probably the bloody, pitiless atmosphere, the generalization of inhuman practices of people-lasting oppressions that they are witnessing a apocalypse. Case number 2 of Series A is a typical psychotic reaction, but case number 1, 2, 4, and 5 of Series B suppose vaguer quality, although we cannot really point particular triggering situation. Here it is, the war, this colonial war that very often takes on the aspect of a genuine genocide. This war, which radically disrupts and shatters the world, which is in fact the triggering situation. There are brief psychotic disorders, if we want to use the official term, but putting particular emphasis on war in general and the specific circumstances of a colonial war. After the two major world wars, there was a host of publications on the mental pathology of soldiers engaged in action, as well as the civilian refugees and bombing victims. The novel physiognomy of some of the case histories mentioned here provides confirmation, if we still needed it, that this war phenomenon, even in the pathology it produces. Any thoughts? I think I want to go to the conclusion. Let me see. We have like 5. I wanted to go to the conclusion, but I don't know if we have time. But any thoughts on that?
I think you can go to the conclusion, and great job with the pronunciation of words, because I would have sucked at a lot of this.
Oh. Hey, so we're going, for everybody that's following us, we're going to go to the conclusion and start pick up there. So we're going to the conclusion. I have 235 in my book. All right. So now, comrades, now is the time to decide to change sides. We must shake off the great mantle of night which has enveloped us and reach for the light. The new day which is dawn must find us determined, enlightened, and resolute. We must abandon our dreams and say farewell to our old beliefs and former friendships. Let us not lose time in useless laments or sickening mimicry. Let us leave this Europe stops talking of man, yet massacres him at every one of its street corners, at every corner of the world. For centuries, Europe has brought the progress of other men to a halt and enslaved them for its own personal glory. For centuries, it has stifled virtually the whole of humanity in the name of a so-called social adventure. Look at it now, teetering between atomic destruction and spiritual disintegration. And yet deny its achievements at home have not been crowned with success. Europe has taken over leadership of the world with fervor, cynicism, and violence. And look how the shadow of its monuments spread and multiplies. Every movement Europe makes bursts the boundaries of space and thought. Europe has denied itself not only humility and modesty, but also solicitude and tenderness. It only shows us manliness has been toward man. Only toward man it shown itself to be niggardly and murderously carnivorous. So, my brothers, how could we fail to understand that we have better things to do than follow in that Europe's footsteps? This Europe, which never stopped talking of man, which never stopped proclaiming its sole concern was man. We now know the price of suffering humanity has paid for every one of the spiritual victories. Come, comrades, the Europe game is finally over. We must look for something else. We can do anything today, provided we do not aid Europe, provided we are not obsessed with catching up with Europe. Europe has gained such a mad and reckless momentum that it has lost control and reason, and is heading at dizzying speeds toward the brink from which we would be advised to remove ourselves as quickly as possible. So, I mean, we have 5 minutes left. I wanted to see if anybody had any thoughts before we close out with that conclusion. Yeah. He said
that was a powerful, I mean, obviously we read snippets because we want everyone to read the whole book, but I think that's just a powerful concluding statement by Frantz Fanon. Because look at our reality, like right now, you consistently, wherever we are, we always hear people talking about catching up with Europeans, and we're acting like Europeans showed us a standard that should be adopted. You would think that the people who colonized you, the people who enslaved you, the people who brutalized you, terrorized you, you would think that your experience with those people would make you want to resist any type of resemblance to them. Unfortunately, though, as Frantz Fanon breaks down, we have been psychologically colonized. And so we don't just think that these people, we don't just want freedom from the people, but we want freedom from the people so that we can look like the people, so that we can adopt their customs, so that we can close to the current colonial system. So this is true that we have to stop looking at Europe as the standard, stop looking at European civilization as the standard, and understand clearly that if you look at what's going on in Europe or inside of other imperialist countries, United States or whatever, clearly what they have started, clearly what they have adopted has caused the ruin of a lot of this earth, whether you're talking about environmentally or you're talking about systemically, the fact that so many people are in poverty and dying every day. So clearly, you know, they have not set a standard that should be adopted. And so it's the onus is on us to take up our own cultural backgrounds, to study our culture, to learn our culture for those of us who have not learned our culture, and to take that as being the standard instead of adopting the standards that our enemy has taught us are in our best interest.
Yeah, in addition to that, and you know, just a closing thought, the issue here, you know, what I got from that book from Dr. Fernandez is that if actually, you know, we want to be, you know, who we are and who, you know, where we were, we have to go back, you know, and adapting our own culture, which of course last week we talked about this as well. Though I think he's actually you know, telling all here that look, these are people that came, you know, to you and they stole from you, and they make you believe that, you know, your culture that you do, you know, is wrong. You know, it's not the best form of culture. It's not the best form of identity. You know, and then you take on their identity, and once you do that, you know, you become a subdivision of them. Whenever, you know, you take on someone identity, whenever you take on someone, you know, like that, you become a subdivision of them. You become a photocopy of them. So, you know, and as long you see yourself as being a photocopy, you always relied on them, you know, to be like them. You always want to portray them to be like them. And we will keep asking ourselves, once we do that, we'll keep asking ourselves, you know, with the situation, you know, we will always find ourselves in, because there will not be people to come to us to empower or to give or, you know, what is stole from us. So we ourselves, you know, have to wake up to take back, you know, what was taken from us. We also have to wake up to take back our identity, you know, to, you know, identify ourselves, you know, who we will, and, you know, and moving forward.
All right. So thank you for those closing remarks. And I saw, you know, there were some questions that came up on the screen. I think it was some very, you know, good questions. Maybe we can address those next time that we meet up. For the sake of time, I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this. You know, another study. I think this was our 5th one. So, you know, with building, we're gonna you know, come back every Saturday and continue to build on these important topics and read these, examine these books, and really give a deeper understanding of how can people in the current global social system. The next book we're going to be reading is going to be the Black Radical Tradition. And so make sure everybody that comes on, that joins us in this study, will have the link to that book. And within that book, there's several authors. So, you know, we'll be looking at the works of, there's multiple authors. So we'll be looking at the works of W.E. Du Bois, Huey Newton, you know, Fanon is in there. There's, you know, a plethora of, you know, Black radical thinkers that we examine. So just want to encourage everybody to back every Saturday at 10 a.m. so we can, you know, into these materials. So go to our website, wechargecolonialism.org. Find out how you can be a part of. Tierney, you're looking at me like I'm saying something wrong. I hope I got the got it right.
Multitasking. I think Frank has something to say about it. Do you, Frank?
Yes, I do. I didn't want to cut him, so I think he's kind of frozen.
You have, yes.
Yeah, I didn't want to cut you.
Oh, okay.
I mean, yeah, somebody sent a chat in the link. I think the viewer. I just want to make sure that, you know, we are hearing them and we are listening to them. I think they said something like, you know, the panelists should discuss something. I don't know what they want. So I just want I want to make sure that we address, you know, their problem as well as they are listening. I don't know if anyone can see it. Yeah, someone posted something and said, "Can the panelists discuss?" I don't know what was that. Okay, so yeah, can you describe an African, what is it, econ or econ? Say not articulated in via Euro-based system of CP. I don't know what is CPA, SOCM.
Economy.
Capitalism and something other than capitalism is socialism. The interim, what do you think about democratic socialism? It worked in Scandinavia. I think African people, we have traditions that are communal. And if you look at communalism, the principles of communalism, those are the principles of socialism. A lot of people are scared of the word socialism because they look at it as being a Marxist invention. But if you actually think of the actual definition of socialism, all you're saying is that the means of production, whether it's these big multi-billion-dollar companies, whether it's your land, whether it's your natural resources, that should not be owned by a few individuals who get to control the entire economy. It should be owned collectively by the people so that it could be reflective of the people, so that it can tend to the needs of the people. So I advocate for a system where the means of production are owned by the people collectively, and that by its definition would be socialism. If you don't like the word socialism, use the word communalism. If you don't want to use socialism, you can also say collectivism. There are other isms that to me say the same thing for people who don't feel comfortable identifying with what they deem to be a European ideology. But I think that our African ancestors have laid the foundation for us. So what we have to do, as Nkrumah said, scientific socialism, meaning you're scientific with how you're going to actually carry it out. We have the principles, so let's take the principles and make it something that's going to work in our current world. And there are other countries who have done this, have been successful: Cuba, Vietnam, many. So that's what I would say. Since we have very short time, I don't want to.
Yeah, thank you, Tiani. Thank you so much. That summarizes. So actually, Tiani just summarized it. That's the difference between the African socialism and the Western socialism. So whenever Western tell you about socialism being a crowd, being bad or something, you should always know that their view is different from the African perspective or the African view. Yeah, Brother Kimba, you can go ahead. It's up to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I unite with those answers to that question. Sometimes I think people when they think of capitalism, socialism too, they look at it as like abstract ideas. But it's defining or describing the actual practice that's taking place. Like capitalism is nothing that when we say capitalism, of course, like there was forms of trade that existed way before the rise of colonial capitalism in Africa. But that system in Africa, you can't equate that to the system that we have now. Those two distinct systems. Capitalism was not practiced capitalism that we have today was not practiced in Africa. And so that that's the struggle that I have with people. But yeah, so again, like, make sure you come back. We can continue this discussion though around these particular ideas and systems. If you just keep 10 a.m. every Saturday. Appreciate everyone being on this study, and peace. That's all I have.
Peace, everyone.